button, get going. I'd like to call to order the February 20th regularly scheduled, one day late Board of Public Works meeting, and move on to the invocation. Lord, we pray that you will bless this meeting. Help us have fun yet productive discussions that will broaden our perspectives. Help us to take the various ideas presented and think of ways to flesh them out. If we do disagree, let it be on the content and not personality conflicts or power plays. Help us to resolve any disputes gracefully, be creative problem solvers, and have great team spirit. Help us to find principles that we can agree on and put these into practice. Amen. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, I need a motion to approve the consent agenda for January.
So moved.
And a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Looks like that motion carries. All right. Any comments from the audience?
I would like to take and introduce, we have some folks that are improving the outlook of our room. Beverly, would you like to introduce someone to us? And Beverly is our HR extraordinaire, and she's got someone with her today to help us out.
I don't need the podium for this. This is quick. So Jamie King is our new HR coordinator. She will be training with me for the next 2.5 years to hopefully take over my position when I retire. She has just started her certification for SHRM, which we required for my replacement, and she has been absolutely wonderful since we've had her here since December. So you will be seeing her face around here.
Good, welcome.
Very
If
good.
you can't find me, you can always get her.
Okay,
So we're happy to have her.
Welcome aboard.
thank you.
Thank you.
She hasn't been here long, but already made a great impact.
She has.
Glad to have her.
All right. Any other comments? Having heard none, we go right to the general manager report.
All right, well, I already asked President Ortworth if he wants the long version or the short version. This could be a very short meeting, and we'll try and maybe we'll just be respectful of time is what I will say. I have a couple of items on my general manager report. First of all, a report on the Proposition S. I would like to remind everybody once again that our job in this is that we are to educate people about what we're doing, what the proposition is, and also not to advocate. We've done the following. There's only 42 days left until the election on April 2nd. Proposition S is a mechanism to create a funding source for a stormwater utility. We have been given the authority and the responsibility to have a stormwater utility, and currently, even though I've got a picture here that shows a recent problem up at Lake Apollo, this is a storm drain, and you can see that the actual grates are to the left of it, but we've had to put a plate over the top of it, and we put a barricade on top so people see that not to hit it, and the neighbor right next to it, he went out there and kindly put some Christmas lights on it that's on a solar cell that keeps it nice and lit. But I think this is very important to see because some people say, this really doesn't affect me. I don't have a pipe in front of my yard. I don't have a grate in front of my yard. But that is in a relatively newer part of town. And so the degradation of our system from all the way at downtown in the lower parts of the elevation of our community, they have absolutely degraded. But that degradation continues to get higher and climb higher to where we have some of our newer communities starting to see those same issues. And we've got to have funding in order to fix that. So several months ago, early in 2023, we created a committee of 15 of our citizens. They represented a broad array of different people. They sat down, they asked many hard questions, and they came up with our stormwater funding source that is now Proposition S. The graph is in our packet that shows you what the different amounts are. They felt that approximately $12 a month or $144 for the lowest usage for a small electric meter would be appropriate, that wouldn't harm even those on the fixed income. Now, there's a rough correlation between what an electric meter is and the number of cars on a road, because that's what we're talking about, this stormwater, keeping our roads safe. If you go to the commercial idea, the smallest meters are those that what I would call a mom and pop downtown, where they're trying to get 20 to 30 cars to their business in a day, while those larger ones like Aldi and Lowe's and Walmart are driving thousands of vehicles to their properties a day. So that's where that gradation of large to small, impact of vehicles on the road, that's that connection. And yes, we admit it's coarse, but that is there. Finally on that, they're looking at, there was an article written a week or so ago, and one of the people that was complaining was saying that, I'm a property owner that has many properties and I have many meters, and that this is unfair to me. Well, with each of those meters, there's someone that's renting from that individual, and he has an income for those properties. This committee said, to make it fair, we're going to give them over a year to prepare to pay the first tax that would be put on that property. So even though that person has multiple properties, he's going to have a year to figure out what the size of that meter, what the meter usage is, what that fee is going to be, and then share that appropriately with his renter or lessee, and that they can then pay that tax and that it won't be a burden upon them. So it's not, I'll admit, it's not palatable. Nobody in their right mind wants to vote in a tax. But this is one of those where we need to have it. If we have that tax, we're going to be able to begin repairing, assessing, and prioritizing that system and maintaining it like we should. If it does not pass, it is going to simply continue to degrade. We will simply put more plates on the roads, and the safety will continue to be in question.
As you know, and probably everybody else does, is one or more people on that 15-person committee own multiple properties, and having their input into the fairness of that process, I think, is critical and was critical and helped the whole thing make sense to me.
Your point is right on target. Yes, absolutely. Anything else on that one? All right, I'm going to move on to the next. The next is fluoridation. What I have here is I have an award, several awards, a couple of letters, one to the city, one to ourselves, from the state Missouri Department of Health and Senior Services. We also have a federal from the CDC, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, for Water Fluoridation Quality Award to the Hannibal Board of Public Works in Hannibal, Missouri. What we do is at our water treatment plant, we ensure that there is at least 0.7 to 1.4 parts per million fluoride in our water. The optimum to be able to help oral health, to keep cavities out, to make teeth strong, and to help both the young and the old that have teeth, and that's most of us, we are able to have greater oral health, and that alone benefits all of us. They say, some of their studies, and it fluctuates from, for every dollar put in, there is a $20 to $32 savings in dental costs and health, etc. I've read other studies that say because we have clean teeth and a healthy mouth, that it actually has a great effect on heart disease and some of the other aspects of our health and life. And so that the actual value of having that fluoride is exceptional. So we've gotten a couple of awards, and they recognize that. The other thing that I would say is that we have to tip our hats to the city, because this is something that's there because of city ordinance. I can't quote the year, but I think it's been like 30 to 40 years ago that the city actually passed an ordinance that says we are required to do this. One of the things that's happened in the last 5 or 10 years is there's a movement out there of people saying, oh no, fluoride is terrible for you. And there's this understanding that we have from our existing CDC, et cetera, that recognize the health benefits of it. So I would tell you that we've won these awards. I'm quite proud of it. We have great operators that make sure that this water is safe, meets that criteria it should, and that they do a great job. So, all right. My third point is simply the hometown advantage. And it really is applauding you, the board, that one of the things that we have throughout the country, there are independently owned utilities, there are private utilities, there are cooperatives, especially on the electric side, and each one of them has a different governance style. You, I'll say gentlemen and Mrs. Cookson, are here because you've been appointed by the mayor and city council. They have been elected. But if there is a problem in this community, we have about 8,500 meters. If there's a problem, they know how to get a hold of you. They know when these meetings are. They can come and they can voice any opinion and problem that they may have. And what is kind of interesting, that it was written from the APPA, it says some people, if they have issues, they can actually run for office themselves to take care on a more direct role in the future of the utility. Kelly was once one of those outspoken people about an issue, and now she's serving on the board. I think that's a remarkable and a good thing. And so this is how it works. And so when people say, well, we're not just running willy-nilly out there. We're being governed by you, who is ultimately governed by the voice of the people, and that accessibility is a fantastic thing.
Compare it to a public utility.
What's that?
Compare it to a public utility.
So a public utility is probably, the headquarters are probably not located in your local town. The ability for you to go to their board meetings is non-existent because their board meetings, or meetings at least, are behind closed doors. You don't get to hear anything until it's all done. And the chances of you getting to them and speaking to them is very, very minimal to non-existent. Is that the point you would like to make?
Thank you.
Oh, you bet. And the other thing is, so cooperatives are owned by everybody they serve, but oftentimes they don't get the voice that they want either. And they've found more and more, there's percentages and studies that they're not quite as open to the public as they could be. So proud of what we do, and we're grateful to you, gentlemen, and Mrs. Cookson, for serving and giving the time that you do.
Interesting.
A couple of things. We have a report from Erica. Erica is working very hard and doing a great job. She's got activities going that are helping build the unity and the camaraderie of the BPW, and also helping us get a little more fit. We've got the Biggest Loser competition going on in the Get Active, and she's been working with them to do that, and that's great. She's also been working with our key accounts. We have our 6 largest electric users and utility users, and she's got contacts with them, and we're taking care of their needs and questions as those things arise. So she's done a great job. We also would encourage you to look at, we have Beverly here with the human resources. She's been exceptionally busy. What happens is we have one person that will quit or move on, and that has to be filled, and oftentimes it's filled within. And that's what happened. We had a water treatment supervisor who left us. It had to be filled. So someone moved there, well, that one has to be filled, and then that one gets to be filled, and as a union, we get to move internally before we step outward. And so with that, we've had how many position changes in the last?
We've got about 5 that are gonna roll.
They're all.
And we have some posted externally right now.
So they've been juggling and working exceptionally hard to make sure it's all done right and that the right people are in the right places. And we're grateful for all the people that are stepping up and doing just that. And then we'll leave the power supply to Paul. He'll cover more of that later. So that is the general manager's report. Now, I apologize, but Matt is not here. He's on a well-deserved leave at this time. I'm going to be covering for him for the operations report and for the next.
Okay, if anybody has any questions of the general manager's report, we'll move right on to operations.
No,
Okay.
fine.
All right, I'm going to go quickly in the operations. If you will take a look, you'll recognize that we had half the outages that we did the month before. We have 6 of them. 1 was for squirrel, 3 for trees, 2 for equipment. Again, we've been aggressive on the tree trimming, and we're working aggressively on the squirrel, actually. We've got some operations. We're trying to be as proactive as we can there. The time of outages did go up from 398 minutes to 463. But again, we had one that was a rather large one with an equipment over on Heritage. So that one was taken care of. Our electric crews are still out doing lots of pole change outs. And also, probably the biggest thing they're working on is down at the viaduct. They've been doing some major additional equipment installation so that it can be isolated without major interruption, and then isolated on the other side again without interruption by adding, I believe, some extra sectionalizers, but that's been a big plus. Electricians and maintenance mechanics continue to do a great job. The best thing that they do is that you don't hear from them because lift stations, pump stations are working the way they should, and they keep the maintenance up on those. We're starting the new year, so trending hasn't quite shown, but they've done a great job of doing the accounting for unaccounted for water, again, being proactive in that efforts. Water distribution, 11 repairs during the month. 4 were completed and 5 main leaks were repaired. Again, doing great jobs there. When it comes to the wastewater treatment plant, they've been replacing lots of pumps and doing it before they fail. And so that's another one of those things that keeps us in compliance as it should. They've also been working on the pre-treatment. So we're talking to our customers that are giving us their effluent, and we've had some discussions with General Mills and tightening up on a few things. And they've done a great job in doing it the right way. And again, Erica has helped us in those communications. They have TV'd in January. We TV'd over 12,833 feet of pipe and cleaned over 17,755 feet of pipe. And what we're doing is approximately, we're going to be able to clean the entire system once every 5 years. So if you do the math on that, that's quite a bit of pipe that we have in the ground that we are maintaining and maintaining. Stormwater system, not much there to talk about other than the Proposition S. NISC, Matthew Jones has been doing great things there as always, and that is about it for the operations report. We do have a camera system that Matthew has been working with us, putting down at the Wilson Street lift station that will also allow us to take and watch the railroad track during the viaduct changeover. We're also going to have a camera up on City Hall watching that, and so if that's blocked, they'll know how they have to get to the south side in order to have issues, and so we'll help out the city.
That's a big safety issue also. The railroad needs that, but they encourage that kind of activity so that if something happens, then there's documentation.
You got it. Projects report. Here we go. The wastewater treatment plant, the roof, it is all done. One of the things that has happened is that the actual materials were off, and so you'll see some seams that are off-centered. The contractor is going to come back and correct that when they get the additional materials, but it is currently watertight, and it's okay, other than we're going to make sure that we get everything that we paid for. This is a fiduciary responsibility that we have, so we'll make sure that it's done right ultimately. The gravity filter media, we have signed the contracts, and we are now waiting on materials for them to come in and begin. And we anticipate that in the next couple of months that they will begin that one in earnest.
Question on that.
Yes.
Quickly. Do we video that? In other words, could that be videoed and posted? Just information for the public.
Watching the work get done.
Yeah, it's the visual of those big bags and the whole process that has to go be done.
Let me talk to our IT wizard, and he'll tell me yes or no on that.
And maybe it's already there, and I just haven't seen it. But okay.
Matthew shook his head, yes, he has heard the effort, the request. And then water loss, the information that we have received so far, we're going to be changing out part of that very same filter change out at the water treatment plant. There's a meter up there that's going to be changed out. We anticipate that will also tighten up our water loss. Hit the wrong button there, sorry. On the sewer side, we're going to be working, Trek has worked on their design on the downtown sewer. We're going to be looking at doing some CIPP, cured in place pipe, especially downtown when it comes to the south side, Main Street, between Wilson Lift Station, the wastewater treatment plant, all down through there, that we're going to be doing some pipelining, and we're coming closer to that and moving that one forward. We're looking at getting contracts on that and making that happen. Patchen Street I&I, they've changed out some pumps there that will keep up with some of the capacity that we haven't had in the past. And again, we've done some work down there with the I&I, doing some of the location patches with our cured in place pipe. Stormwater, we're working on that, moving it forward. And the North Street project, this is a project we're doing in conjunction with the city. It is the city that was awarded $5 million in ARPA money. We'd have to, Matt is especially spearheading this. We have the design that was made that is looking at coming from where the North Street, the project ended with the Army Corps of Engineers. It's going to come up North Street, take about a 45-degree turn, and end up where the old bridge began. That abutment, that's where it's going to stop. The bid for that was right at $1.56 million, leaving about $3.5 million on the table. We have gone back with our engineer, with PSBA, and they are going to see what we can do to get further engineering and further pipe in the ground, kind of going up the north lane of Mark Twain Avenue. And we have a length that we believe we can go with that remaining 3.5. And we have to, there's some time constraints, so we have to have it bid and ready to work by the end of this year. Now, it may seem like that's a long ways out, but that 10 months will go very, very, very fast, and we're going to be working very hard. The city has done a great job of getting all the contracts and all the paperwork required for the ARPA funding, and it's now to them. So now we're waiting on their approval or direction on going forward to make that happen. So it's a great work that we're doing in conjunction with the city, and have to take, Matt's not here, so I can say nice things about him, but he's done a heck of a job moving that one forward. Also, we have the Bear Creek Dam spillway improvements. It's the same thing. It's ARPA money that's being funded. We have gotten it to the design phase for the engineer. We then hand that back to the state, who has the ARPA money in their pocket. They have to approve everything that we've gotten to date, then to move forward, and we're waiting for them at this point in time. So we're waiting for them to tell us we've done it either right, wrong, and then move forward with it. Electric projects, we have the Indian Mounds substation. That has been moved on. If last month I would have told you we had about 45 weeks to go before we got the new transformer, that has now changed. Jared has told me that that's now been pushed back again to almost a year before we can get that. So the supply chain issues are not easing up when it comes to transformer, when it comes to the materials that we have to put into our grid system, etc. But that one is moving forward. Jared also with Matt have done a great job of moving that project forward. And the tie line is also, it's still under design. We're waiting. We have put the Indian Mounds substation. That's our number one priority. The tie line is a close second, but that's where our priorities are being pushed at that point in time. And I believe that is the end of Matt's reports.
Okay, does anybody have questions of either operations or projects?
Go ahead.
Yep. I saw something on the news, wasn't yesterday, I don't think, might have been, about the airport and the property out there. Something about a lease or...
Was it the farm lease?
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
So that doesn't have anything to do with the, okay.
It doesn't. So if you look at the airport, you've got the runways here, down
Mm-hmm.
at the bottom, kind of down to the, I don't know, is that the east? That's where there's some farm field right there, and they're looking at re-upping the contract for that lease. Mike, is that correct? Okay.
I know
And
what you're
that's,
talking about.
Is
Yeah.
that
so,
what,
yeah.
what we're calling the Hannibal Park lease, or is that something different?
You'd have to ask Mike. I don't know. Say that again, please.
Hannibal Park lease?
Okay, so our lease, we have at the industrial park,
Oh, okay, that's different.
we
Yeah.
lease out the farmland that's there. And we just, I'll give Paul credit for this. He's really moved and rebid that leasing. And so there was a farmer that rebid that, and he's going to be,
Okay,
we've re-upped that for another, it's a yearly lease, but for 5 years.
okay.
I think the airport's Chase Golding,
I'm not sure.
isn't it? It's Golding. It's Golding.
So,
That sounds right.
but if you look, and again, the farm field's over here, runway's here, we're looking at doing it on the west side of the runway where we're putting solar.
One other question, and this may come later. When we do pole replacement, do we also do removals? In other words, is it remove and replace, or replace and remove?
Yes.
The process.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Some of that gets a little tricky though, if there.
Timing.
Well, and the fact that we don't normally move other utilities equipment. We have to wait for the local cable provider or telephone provider to vacate our old pole and move their stuff over.
Coordination then, okay,
Their schedule is completely different than ours.
naturally.
That's why you see some of those stubs that.
Yeah, we do try to cut those off, but sometimes that does take more time than we would like to see.
Okay,
Yeah, the one behind my house is going on over 2 years now.
They are not motivated to come in and move anything.
unless you, no, I won't say.
They are not motivated to move anything.
All right, any other questions, comments about operations or project report? Having heard none, Paul, if you could push the green button and get into the financials, please.
We'll give Darren a break here. All right. Financial report for January 2024. First thing on there is our balance sheet. There was very little change on the balance sheet from last month, other than the current or the continued decrease in our prepaid expenses every month. There was really no other changes to point out. Next page on there is our income statement. So for January, utility-wide net income was about $511,000 less than budgeted. Revenues in the electric fund specifically were down from budget by about $107,000, which we did find a bit surprising given the extremely cold weather there for about 2 weeks, 10 days or so. However, we dug into it a little more, and we think that some of our industrial businesses were forced to shut down for a day or two just based on usage patterns and things like that. Industrial sales specifically were 3% less than budgeted, so we think that's what drove the difference there. Net purchase power costs, though, in the electric fund were $467,000 more than budgeted. And the invoice that we got for that coldest week there in the middle of January was about $666,000. So compare that to an average invoice during that time of about $182,000. So definitely took a hit there from our purchase power standpoint. The water fund, though, did have an excellent month. Revenues in that fund were about 5% more than budget, and operating expenses were about 14% less than budget. You can completely flip that for sewer. Revenues came in less than budget, and operating expenses were more than budget. So kind of the opposite there for sewer. This month compared to a year ago, we actually fared better this year by about $25,000 utility-wide. The electric fund actually, believe it or not, performed better than last year, and that was due to the rate increase that we did in October, which boosted revenues by about 8% compared to last year. Net purchase power came in about the same as last year. Kilowatt hour sales, though, in the electric fund were down by about 2.1% compared to January of 23. which further tells us that it was likely that some industrial didn't quite run as much as the year before with the weather being as cold as it was. The water fund, just like the budget, did perform much better this year than last, and the sewer fund was the opposite, as it did better the previous year. So now we are 7 months into fiscal year 2024, and the net loss in the electric fund has grown to $2.3 million. So compare that to where we expect it to be this time of year, with a budgeted net loss of $1.1 million. And the core issue there that I keep pointing out month after month is that we're just not seeing the same KWH sales that we saw last year. And that's likely due to continued efficiencies from industry and even some commercial businesses. Also, the weather just overall has been more mild this year, with the exception of January. Additionally, with that, net purchase power is now about $633,000 more than what we had budgeted so far this year. We did receive some really good data from our power supply consultants that showed us that we are basically experiencing about a perfect of a storm as we could right now when it comes to purchase power. We have our energy and capacity that has remained elevated compared to about 3 years ago where it was. The credits that we get back from Prairie State and our auction revenue rights and financial transmission rights, we haven't seen those credits like we did last year. They've been significantly less this year. And then lastly, our Prairie State power costs, where we pay for some of the operating costs of running the Prairie State plant, those have actually increased this year compared to the last couple of years, primarily due to inflation and insurance and things like that. And so the last 3 or 4 years, we've been able to rely on at least one of those factors performing well for us. And this year, none of the factors have performed well. So when it came to budgeting, those factors, we were able to kind of take that all into account, and we just haven't seen that relief this year. So that has been what has led to the increase in our net purchase power costs so far. The water fund, year to date, did catch back up after last month, and it is now performing better than its budgeted net income. But the sewer fund did have another poor month, like I said, and so it is now, at least revenues specifically, are now behind budget by about $155,000. So far this year compared to last year, utility-wide net income is about $1.3 million less for many of the same reasons that I said before. Total revenues obviously are higher than last year with the rate increases that we did, but net purchase power costs are now about $1.3 million more than they were last year. And the biggest driver in that is that we have recognized $3.8 million less in Prairie State MISO credits than we did last year. So those credits that we had budgeted for and had counted on the last several years just haven't came in as high this year. And like we've talked about, that's primarily due to the electric markets being less volatile. There's just less gain to be recognized when the markets are more stable like they are right now. We've got our normal information on there, check, register, everything. If you flip down to page 27, look at our debt service coverage ratio. It's declined a bit in the electric fund to be less than 3 now. And so we'll be looking at that closely as we budget for next year and improving that ratio and what we can do to do that. The water fund did improve from a 1.7 to a 1.8, so that was a positive sign. And I think that's all I wanted to look at with financials. Does anybody have any questions with anything on the financial report?
No, it looks great.
No, it's just the comment, January, we got hit pretty hard. Typically, you get a couple of months of that in the wintertime, don't we?
Yeah.
Is that, so we're not through the winter yet?
Correct. Yeah, I would say January and February, from a revenue standpoint, are typically some of our higher months. So we do budget for that. They're definitely not shoulder months, but just didn't quite have the revenues that we had budgeted for in January.
You do have that cycle. Winter that's tough, then it levels, then it comes to summer, and so this is, you're losing here, making it up here, losing, making up, so, yeah, we don't have, it's not a great report, I wouldn't, not gonna brag about it at all. But we're okay, let's hold the course, and let's keep going.
All right, any other questions or comments of Paul on the financials?
No.
Having heard none, looks like the next item is Paul again with new business.
All right, so every year after our audit, we, by policy, report to you all some key financial ratios that we look at. So Bill is back, so he's got the audit there, and I've distributed that to the rest of you, I think, last meeting. But we take that and we analyze some of the ratios that we deem key ratios based on how risky we are to prospective lenders. We also look at measures of profitability, very common benchmark ratios that you'll see out in the industry. And then we put goals with those ratios compared to what would be benchmarks to other utilities, and then we analyze those every year. So specifically, starting with the electric fund, you'll recall that it was a very challenging year, and I apologize, I'm colorblind, so I can't see if you can tell if there's a difference between black and red, but there's supposed to be. Black would be it's okay, red would be it's not meeting our goal. And so with the electric fund specifically, you'll recall that purchase power was what actually jumped to the highest level that we've seen since fiscal year 2017. And the primary reason for that was capacity, which cost us $3.4 million last year compared to just $43,000 the year before. So a lot of these ratios that look at the income statement were negatively impacted by that. And the total net loss in the electric fund was $2.5 million. So the only two ratios that remained above their goals were balance sheet only ratios. Those would be the debt to assets and then the current ratio. All four other ratios were negative for the year, which prompted the rate increase in October of 2023. And so we'll look at these ratios again next year and hopefully see some improvement. The next page would be our water fund. Most of the ratios in this fund did improve in fiscal year 23. Obviously, we did 2 rounds of rate increases, which followed our rate track that we implemented in fiscal year 23. And so we did see a lot of improvement. The most notable improvement would be the debt service coverage ratio. You'll recall that we have 2 bonds outstanding in the water fund that both require us to maintain a DSCR, debt service coverage ratio, of 1.25. And so you can see the improvement there from 1.5 to 1.6. And as I just reported on in the financial report, it now sits at about a 1.8. So we've seen continued improvement in that ratio, which is a good sign for the covenants in that fund. Outside of that, with the water fund being so highly leveraged with debt, we do see some of our balance sheet ratios that aren't meeting their goals. Those will improve as we continue to pay those bonds down. But that just is where the water fund is with its debt right now. Next page is our sewer fund. We did see an increase in operating expenses in the sewer fund while operating revenues stayed basically flat from the year before. So net income from our audit in that fund was about 41% less than fiscal year 22. So that did result in a reduction in our debt service coverage ratio as well as our net profit margin. Again, you can see there that the only ratio not meeting its goal is the net profit margin at 9%. So despite that, in the sewer fund, it is still very healthy and operates in a strong financial position. But we'll be monitoring that net profit margin going forward. The last page on there is going to be our company-wide summary. I don't take a lot of value in this because the way we budget our revenues and our expenses is entity by entity, so electric, water, and sewer separately. So it doesn't do a lot of good to look at this. But just from a pure operating standpoint, revenues utility-wide were up by about 0.6% in fiscal year 23, but expenses were up far greater by about 22%. And the main driver for that was purchase power, which specifically was up 46% from the year before. Again, that was due to the increase in capacity. And obviously with the electric fund by far being our largest fund, like I said, it doesn't do a whole lot of good to look at these ratios at a company-wide level. None of this, none of these calculations include stormwater. Just wouldn't do any good with it not having a revenue source right now. Any questions on any of these ratios? Anything that you would like to see changed or added or done differently?
A lot of homework.
A lot of numbers, I know, so that is, apologize for that. But, so we, take these into account when we do our budget. Obviously, the debt service coverage ratio is the biggest one that we look at, but we do look at some of the other ones just to make sure we're meeting these goals. And then I'll obviously look at the benchmarks utility-wide or industry-wide, just to make sure those benchmarks haven't changed one way or another. Any other questions for me?
Anybody up here have questions of Paul?
No.
No? All right, thanks very much.
Thank you.
A lot of work goes into that. And do we have comments from the city attorney?
Unless the board has any questions, I have nothing.
Okay. Any general discussion? If not, I recommend we get a motion to go into closed session.
Pursuant to section 610.021, 12 of the Missouri Sunshine Law, the meeting shall convene in closed session to discuss contracts to include board members, Courtney, Paul, and the city attorney.
Do I have
Or
a
the
second?
board's attorney.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Very nice to meet you.